Welcome everyone. My name is Mark Voice, one of the business development managers here at Ingram Micro. We'll be starting very shortly in a couple of minutes. We'll wait for everyone to come on in and settle down for today's session. But for starters, if anyone on the chat could just let me know if you can hear me and see the screen, pop something in the chat, that'd be great. But give us a few more minutes for everyone to pop in and we'll get started. Thank you. Welcome everyone for coming in. We're just waiting a few more minutes for everyone to come in and settle in. Settle yourself down, pull up a chair. We will be starting very shortly. Thank you. We are just moments away from starting, everyone. Just waiting a little bit longer for anyone that would like to come in. So thank you for your patience. We'll be starting very shortly. Okay, I think we've got a great quorum here right now. Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar on Microsoft Defender for Business. My name is Mark Voice. I am the Business Development Manager for Modern Work and Security here at Ingram Micro Cloud in Australia. With me today, we have Microsoft MVP, Robert Crane, and Ingram Micro's Modern Work and Security Solution Architect, Sevag Tamukian. Now, before I pass the mic over to Rob, who will be taking us through the Defender for Business product, I want to let you all know that this webinar will be recorded and you will be able to watch on demand once the session is completed. And also, very important to note, if there are any questions during the webinar, any of those burning questions that you would like Robert or ourselves to answer, please feel free to pop them into the chat and we'll make sure that they're answered for you. So as you can see on the screen there, the agenda for today, you've got the introduction to Microsoft Defender for Business, how Microsoft Defender for Business is different to all the other products in the marketplace, and we'll do a capability and deep dive into the product so you can see what it looks like from an admin's perspective. So what we are hoping you'll be leaving from the session today is a greater understanding of Defender for Business and how it differs. So without further ado, I would like to pass control over to Robert Crane to get stuck into the session. Are you there, Rob?
Yep, great, Mark. Thank you very much. Appreciate the intro and everybody joining on today. So hopefully we can share some good information for you around Defender for Business. So in a nutshell, Defender for Business is a security solution from Microsoft. So it has come from an enterprise background, as many Microsoft tools have. It's made its way down into, particularly the business premium SKU. But remember, it's not new. It has been around. It's been used the enterprise E5 level, so it's enterprise grade in the capabilities and functionality that it does provide. Now, again, it also is easy to use, I suppose, because the benefit here is its integration. So it's going to integrate with security.microsoft.com. It's going to integrate with many of the tools that Microsoft have. It's going to feed up signals into Defender for Cloud Apps, into Azure Sentinel, as well. So again, a lot of this is about turning things on, making those connections, making sure that the information is flowing correctly, and then really, to an extent, it's a set and forget sort of arrangement when it comes to configuring and setting this up. We've also got a wizard-driven capability on initial setup, which we'll talk about, but in essence, there still is configuration that an administrator will need to do to get the most out of this product. Now, another really good thing about Defender for Business is that it is included as part of the SKU with Business Premium. So that means at no additional cost, every customer that you have that has Business Premium already installed will get Defender for Business, already has Defender for Business as part of their offering in there. So there's no additional costings to buy if they have Business Premium. Now, if you want to add this on to other SKUs, you can. It is a standalone option as well, so don't forget that. So if you do like what you see, but you have customers who want to stay on other SKUs, like Business Basic perhaps, well, you can buy this certainly as an add-on. We'll talk about the specifics a bit later on. So what is Defender for Business? So at the end of the day, it's a number of core components around, threat and vulnerability management. So one of the big advantages that Microsoft brings to the table here is simply the amount of signals that it's receiving from the environment out there. So if you think of all the Microsoft tenants out there that are experiencing threats, all of that intelligence is then feeding up into the Microsoft cloud. It is then being analyzed with Microsoft's capabilities and AI, and then the benefits are being shared across everybody. So even though you might have a small business style tenant, you're going to get the value of all those signals into your environment that you can examine, dive deep in the analysis and so on. So that is a really big benefit here is, the size of Microsoft, the breadth that it has across the environment and the signals it's generating and can feed back directly into your console. Another thing to remember is that one of the best ways to prevent attacks or to, especially around ransomware, is to look at the implementation of attack surface reduction, so ASR. So ASR in a nutshell prevents the child processes being spawned inside the environment. So it's going to prevent, a macro running from an attachment. It's going to prevent PowerShell going in and running a child process. Now, attack surface reduction we can do manually in Windows 10 Pro and above, but it's much easier to do it as a policy because there may be some circumstances where certain software needs to be exempted from some of the rules there. But again, it is included the management and all of the signals from ASR, again, feed back up into our console so that we can see these in a single location. One of the challenges with security these days is it can't be about simply looking at signatures. It can't be about looking for patterns. It really has to be about behavior. So, why is this user logging in at this time? Why are they logging in on a non-compliant machine? Why are they running PowerShell? Why are they trying to escalate their privileges here? That's what next generation protection is all about. It's about, okay, more about behaviors. It's like, hang on, this is not common. Why is this out of the normal accepted practice? Maybe we need to have a look at that. Now, Defender for Business includes endpoint detection and response. So that starts with your traditional AV to do scanning, to jump in on processes that may try and download malware, but it also looks again at behavior. It also will step in when there are things in the background that the user may not be aware of or has initiated to detect and remunerate them as required. So it does come with EDR built in. Now, probably the most important thing is, given the landscape and the amount of attacks, the amount of threats that are out there, we need to have a capability to auto-remediate as much as we can. We don't want to be going in there and basically going, oh, approve this, no, this whitelist this, do this. We want the ability here to have that done for us. And again, Microsoft's going to bring down its knowledge, its capabilities from many, many environments to be able to make these sort of automated remediations. Now, importantly, not only is it going to remediate, but it can also do investigation, which means it's going to capture the services that we're running, the processes that we're running, the memory dumps, the DLLs, all of that sort of stuff can be provided in a package to do offline forensics if needed, to do further investigation. So all of that is automated in Defender for Business. Now you'll see here we've also got the ability to simplify onboarding. Now we can do onboarding, which we'll cover in a number of different ways, but best practice, thanks to the fact that it's been rolled into Business Premium, is to do it with Intune. So Intune is a policy-based management capability built into Business Premium. That means we can roll out policies to all our devices. So that is going to be the simplest, easiest, and best way to roll out the onboarding and the management and the administration going forward. Now, can you do it manually? Absolutely, if you want to do that. And probably to start off with your first couple of installs, I would do it manually just to get the feel of it. But in the long run, you want to look at doing the automation side of it. And again, we'll show you how to run through those basic processes there. Now, what I really like about this is the fact that we've got APIs and integration. So we can hit it with our favorite scripting tool, PowerShell, but I've also been able to set up the integration between Defender for Business and things like the Power Platform. So I can use the APIs to go out and make calls to a variety of tenants, multi-tenant environment, bring all of that information back into one single location and then analyze it with Power BI or some of the other tools that are available in the Microsoft environment. This is all thanks to the APIs. So basically everything we see here we can do through the web console. That's great, but really the way forward is to look at APIs to give that customized feel and to be able to produce a really unique solution for the market out there. Now, importantly, these days, Microsoft is a software company, which means that it's really focused on providing software on all possible platforms out there. Now you'll see here that this means that the endpoints it supports are basically all the major ones. So they're Windows, obviously, Mac OS, iOS and Android. So we have Defender clients on our mobile devices. And now we also have the integration with Azure Virtual Desktop and our Windows 365 for our VDI style environments as well. Because again, we'll have users working in those and potentially doing things or going places they shouldn't. So we want to be able to protect those nice and easily, inside our environments as well from that single pane of glass. So again, we can buy Microsoft Defender for Business standalone, as I mentioned. All right, so generally these are indicative prices. Speak to obviously the people at Ingram about this to get the exact pricing, but roughly we're looking at a couple of bucks for a standalone version. But remember that it's going to be integrated with Business Premium. Now in Business Premium, not only do we get Defender for Endpoint or Defender for Business, we also get Defender for Office 365 for our email hygiene. We also get Azure AD P1, which will give us conditional access, which is going to, for example, block logins from outside geographic locations. It's also going to do a regular analysis or, to evaluate whether the people logging into our environment still have valid machines, valid credentials. So this conditional access is extremely powerful security capability that if you haven't looked at as already, you really should. We've got autopilot to allow us to deploy our machines in an automated manner directly from a distributor. We've got our AVD desktop if we want it, and again, we've got the shared computer activation. So at the end of the day, really, Microsoft Business Premium, even before the inclusion of Defender for Business, was the go-to SKU in SMB. It really has the best bang for your buck when you look at all the capabilities that are available. So if you haven't looked at it, now is the time to really look at it and look at upgrading people to that level, because to do security properly, you're going to have to invest in a range of security tools. And again, my advice to you is, Azure AD Premium P1, the ability to do the mailbox archiving, all of that stuff really does provide a value add on top of just plain old email and plain old files and folders. Now you'll get a copy of these slides afterwards, so you don't need to look at, we don't worry about each individual comparison here, but in a nutshell, what we have here is, to start out with, Microsoft released Defender for Endpoint. So that was original enterprise grade. Then what it did, it split the Defender for Endpoint into two plans, P1 and P2, so a lightweight and the full whack. And recently it added Defender for Business. So really, when you look at the capabilities that Defender for Business includes, it is far superior to the Plan 1, and there's only a couple of missing components that are in P2. The main limitation with Defender for Business is that it won't or can't be installed in over 300 seats. So it is really a targeted SMB style solution. So you can buy it standalone, but remember, if you do buy it standalone, you are limited with Defender for Business to a maximum of 300 seats. But you'll see here that Defender for Business is going to give us our next gen protection, our endpoint, our EDR, our things like our threat analytics, our APIs, all that, but we don't get, for example, the threat expert. So the threat expert is a P2 SKU inclusion, which means you can contact the Microsoft Security Response Center and get some hands-on assistance with that if you need it. So again, if we look at a little bit more detail as to the comparisons here, you'll see that again, Defender for Business basically includes everything that you need, really, I would suggest. So you're going to get the ability to control the network firewall, the network protection. You'll notice there that you also get the URL blocking. So we'll talk about this briefly, but you do also get the capability to do web filtering on your devices as well as part of Defender for Business. So again, we'll cover that when we look at the demo side of things. And again, if we look at the detailed product comparison here, you'll see that, again, really some of the things that are missing are only P2, and we really probably, they're not a huge value in our market. Now, if you look at the APIs that are not spec there, therefore third-party applications, third-party centralized third-party SIEM connectors, it will happily, Defender for Business will happily connect to the Azure Sentinel, and there are other ways that you can connect to external parties if you do wish to do that. So again, you'll get a copy of the slides after. You can have a look at all the product comparisons there. I do have a link in the resources at the end, which will give you the current documentation on looking at the comparison between all the plans if you want to do that on an ongoing basis. Now, initially, this is a bit of an old slide because it talks about Defender Advanced Threat Protection, ATP. That was the old Defender for Endpoint name, but this is probably the best slide that illustrates the point that I want to make here. So if you look on the left-hand side here, you'll see that all the events from the device, hardware-based isolation, application control, the firewalls, the browsers, all of those events are then fed into the Defender for Business console. So that's going into a central location. Now, the Windows Defender client, which you get with every Windows PC, is the same client. It's an enterprise client on all the machines. Now, what Defender for Business will do when you onboard devices, it simply connects that endpoint so that the signals, rather than being kept local, will be sent through to the backend cloud service for aggregation, for viewing, reporting, alerting, and so on. So again, that agent is already on any Windows machine and will be reporting those data points up once you do onboard the device. Once you onboard devices like iOS and Android, and you do need a dedicated app to do that, to send those signals through, those signals will come through as well. Now, if we move to the cloud side towards the middle there, you'll notice that the Microsoft Defender Security Center in the middle there has our alerts, our hunting, our reporting, our events, and our actions. Now, it's important to remember here that Defender is now a range of products. So we have Defender for Endpoint, we have Defender for Office 365, we potentially have Defender for Identity for our on-prem AD, and so on. Now, this is the advantage of this integrated solution from Microsoft, where all of these are now feeding into a single console, being security.microsoft.com, and they're all feeding into a single alerts and incidents queue. So we can look in one place for all the events and all the incidents that are occurring across our complete fleet, whether it's email, whether it's devices, whether it's identity. And we can access all of those with APIs as well, which makes it really handy to be able to get to. Now, all of those events can also be shipped to things like Sentinel. They can be enhanced with Power BI. they can be further analyzed with things like Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, which is the old Cloud App Security. So this integration really is the winner here, right? So a lot of people have a lot of individual products out there that may or may not do the job. At the end of the day, where they fall down is the integration. How do we get the signals from this particular item over to here so we can look at it in a single point in time, and we can view this as a single pane of glass. So you'll see there that we have the integration with Office 365, Azure, Azure AD. We've also got those threat experts out there if we do go to the P2 license. We've also got this auto remediation and so on. Okay, so the real takeaway point here is, apart from all that, if you step back and have a think about it, right, the Defender for Endpoint client is shipping events to a cloud service in a centralized manner. If you have a think about this, what else does that you're probably very familiar with? Well, I would suggest to you that that is very much like an RMM tool, right? This is a remote management capability with the client already integrated into Windows, iOS, Android, and basically, all of these devices. So if you look at the long play here, or you look at potentially where Microsoft's going, and again, this is my theory, just my theory, but you'll see that they're beginning to potentially look at providing the technology when integrated with Intune, Endpoint Manager, some of the update stuff they've done recently, some of the remote support stuff they've done. Again, if I was a traditional RMM provider, I would be worried that Microsoft's beginning to move into this space. And we know that given Microsoft's size and its focus and the resources that it can throw at these sort of problems, it's probably, if it really puts its mind to it, it's going to be, a major player in that area. So, have a think about, okay, this is great, and this is what we see today, but, where's this going? Because now we have an agent on our devices that can communicate to a cloud service to provide security, management, and administration. But again, what about the extension of this to doing remote support and doing stuff that, a traditional RMM an RMM tool is doing? So again, keep that in mind. And I personally think this is what we're going to, see the growth area going forward. So let's talk about the initial setup, right? So if you end up with a business premium and you go to security.microsoft.com, the first time you go in there, you will see a screen like this, welcoming you to Microsoft Defender for Business. Again, good old wizard here. So again, click on the wizard to start it off. What you then need to do is choose which user is going to be given access to the console to view, the alerts and the incidents. Now, there are effectively two roles here. So you'll see here there is a security administrator who has read-write access, and there is also a security reader. Now, a security reader is very handy, so they can go in and see, what's happening, what's going on, and they're not allowed, or they're not able to make any changes to that environment. So they can look, but they can't touch, sort of thing. So it's always generally good to have a reader, and maybe you want to set it up so the customer can have a look, or maybe one of your techs want to be able to have a look before they, raise a ticket or whatever. So you can control how to do that here, set up as many users as required to get access to the console, either read write or read only. Now, of course, what would a security system be without some sort of alerts? We always need more alerts, don't we? We always need more emails. So you can come in here and you can configure the recipients and the type of alerts you want. So you can, define or separate alerts from vulnerabilities. So an alert is when an incident is triggered, an attack is triggered, ransomware or some sort of threat. Whereas a vulnerability is going to tell you, well, your Windows isn't up to date, or you need to do patches, or you need to, a vulnerability has been announced for this particular software, which is on these client machines. Now you can target these alerts to be a single email address if you want. You could target them to be your ticket environment or service desk or whatever, and you can have multiple environments there if you want to do it. So again, you can make sure that you do get email notifications if you so choose. Next, we have an option here to embed our devices. Now, effectively, there's no automation here. This is all guided. So we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail, but basically this is going to give you the guidance on how to onboard your devices. As I said, Microsoft Endpoint Manager is going to be your preferred option, but you can do a local script, you can still do group policy, you can do VDIs, but that, excuse me, that screen there is simply just going to give you a number of documentation links that you can read to go and implement. So once we've done all that, we want to apply the security settings. So this is just a best practice setup. What are we going to configure our clients to be? Now, if you deploy Defender for Business to an environment that already has some sort of AV protection, a third-party AV, Defender will detect that and go into what's called passive mode. So it will fill in any gaps that it detects the existing third-party security is not doing, and will still provide protection without causing any interference on there. So if you do have third party, it will accommodate that, but generally best practice is going to be to choose one or the other. And remember that Defender for Business you are getting for free, generally with Business Premium. So then we're done. All right, so I'll give you a nice summary there. And then what will happen is you will get a little wait screen while it goes and sets up these things, changes a few policies and a few settings, and then you'll then be done, and you can then select to go to the dashboard, the device configuration, and go on board other devices if you want. So that's really all the wizard does. Very, very basic, only runs once. Effectively what it does is just allows you to target which users can go to the console to make changes or read the information, which alerts and where do you want them sent, and then finally maybe some basic onboarding, particularly around policies for Endpoint Manager and Intune. Okay, so that's really all it's doing. Now, my advice to you is that once you've done that, there are some other things that you need to go in and configure there. All right, so at the end of the day here, what you need to do is you need to drill into the settings, which is also in security.microsoft.com, go into the advanced features, and in there you'll find a range of options like automated investigation, live response, connection with Intune, a whole range of settings. My advice is, and we'll have a look at this, my advice is you go in and turn those all on. There's no downside to turning all of those on, even if the license doesn't necessarily support it. My advice is to go in and basically select that, turn all those options on. You only have to do it once and then save it, and that capability will then be lit up. Okay. So I do see a question here about, there was a delay in the inclusion of Defender to Premium. Is that now included? Yes, every single Microsoft 365 Business Premium tenant now includes Defender for Business, and it is enabled by default on all environments for all customers. So again, you just simply go into the licensing and have a look, and you will see under Business Premium that Defender for Business is there, is included, and generally is enabled. So it is now there and enabled on all installs, existing installs and the new installs of Business Premium. Now, the other thing is once we've turned all those settings on, if we then go to Endpoint Security, so endpoint.microsoft.com, we go to Endpoint Security and we go down to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, you will see the options here that allow you to deploy things quickly and easily. Now, the important thing here is this connection status. This needs to be green to be enabled, to indicate that Intune is now connected to Defender for Business. Now, the reality is you don't necessarily need Intune with Defender for Business. There are different ways to push out the client and management, but you do get the best experience if you do have that integration, which we do with Business Premium. So again, make sure this is enabled, and then you'll see here that we can allow Defender to enforce endpoint security. We can allow Android devices to be connected to endpoint, iOS, Windows, and so on. So we want all of these capabilities that are built in and provide that connectivity. So do the wizard, then go in and turn on all those advanced options so you can light up and connect to other things here, and then go into your endpoint security in Business Premium and make sure that you have that connection status as enabled, and then go and turn all of these on, and your devices will effectively auto deploy. Right, so it's really as simple as that. A couple of little additional options there. Now, onboarding, as we mentioned, there are a number of different ways to skin the cat here. Now, the way you find that is you go into the settings once again, and you'll see down the bottom there's an option here for onboarding. Now, we can choose the operating system we wish to onboard. We can then choose the method. Now, if we look at just Windows 10 here, you will see that, if we select Windows 10 or 11 as the platform, you'll see that we can onboard using a local script. So that's effectively just a command file. We can do group policy. We can do endpoint configuration manager. Not a lot in SMB. This is the one we really want, the MDM and the Microsoft Intune. So this really is the one that we want to use. So we can actually, as always, deploy things a number of different ways here. We can do it with an Intune policy, an endpoint manager policy, or that configuration I just showed you. So generally the configuration I showed you is the easy way to do it rather than go and create a policy. But remember that what I showed you, let me go back probably and show you in a few slides ago. So this thing here, remember that there's no granularity here. It's all or nothing. It's your whole environment or not the whole environment. So I think it's either on or off. So there's not a lot of granularity here if you do want to maybe target different groups of users to be onboarded and not onboarded and so on. And that's where we can use our endpoint manager policies here to control that if you want to do that. So you do have that capability if you want, but generally you want to turn it on for all the environments. Now, if we go and have a look at all the operating systems that are supported here, so you'll see it even goes back to this thing from the past called Windows 7, 10 and 11, servers are there as well, Mac OS, Linux and iOS and Android. So it covers the basically the full spectrum here, right? So the great thing about the Microsoft Defender product is it will work across basically every sort of platform endpoint that is out there listed today. So enough of these slides. Let us go in and maybe have a look at some of this stuff here. All right, so here I am on my demo tenant. I've gone to security.microsoft.com, but since we did have a question on this, let me just pop back into the user and just show you where you can verify that you do have the licensing for that. So here's our users here. Let us pick, I think Adele's got it. Yep, so Adele's got Business Premium here. So if we select Adele and we go into licensing and apps, and then we go down to view all apps and services. All right, so if we scroll down here, we will see there's Microsoft Defender for Business, and you'll see it's turned on. All right, so if you do want to check, go into the user, expand all the licensing capabilities and look for Defender for Business and determine whether it's on or off. So that has now been applied. Now, Defender for Business is a per user license, right? So per user, not per device, per user. You pay per user. The licensing states that the user is permitted up to 5 devices. So, mobile, home machine, desktop, laptop. So you've got 5 devices on which they can install this capability or onboard the environment. Now, if we scroll down the bottom here, we go into settings as mentioned. You'll see that we go into endpoints here. So let's go into endpoints. And if we go down to advanced features, so here's our advanced features. These are all the items that I suggested you go and turn on. Some of them may or may not be on by default, but I would always go in and turn them on. There's no real downside to doing that. Preview features here, I still recommend doing that to get the latest and the greatest. I've never seen it break anything, but if you want to adjust this, again, come into Endpoints Advanced Features and do that. Now, if we scroll down the bottom, we have a look at onboarding. So here's our onboarding, which we covered. So these are the operating system. These are the different methods that are available, to you. So if we go to Intune here, and again, what it'll largely do is it will pop out and give you the documentation on how to set this up for the environment, depending on how you want to deploy it. So it won't do it for you necessarily, but it will certainly show you how to go in and do that. Now, when devices are onboarded, what happens is that if you use the local script option to make sure that's secure, the script basically has a key pair so that it verifies it's coming from your tenant when it deploys. And the same thing applies when you offboard. So you can't just uninstall the client or erase the machine. What you need to do basically is you need to go in and run the appropriate offboarding capability. And again, you choose your operating system here, and typically, you run a local script to remove that machine so it's no longer sending signals into the Microsoft Defender environment. So, right, you need to onboard devices and offboard devices. You don't necessarily need Intune or Endpoint Manager to achieve that, but life is a lot easier when you do that. So then if we look at endpoint.microsoft.com, so this is our device management area, as I showed you. So once you've done your advanced features, you go to Endpoint Security, and we go into Defender for Endpoint when it comes up, and down the bottom here, and we then go in and make sure that our status is enabled, and then we would go in and turn on all those options, right? So we have the ability to connect to app protection policies, days before until the something's unresponsive, and we would get then a report of how many devices have been onboarded. Again, this is a demo tenant, so there aren't any devices on there as yet that are reporting back in. Now, once we have onboarded our devices, if we scroll up, we'll see here that under endpoints in our Defender console, so go back to home here, scroll down, so you'll see here under endpoints, this is our device inventory. So this is where all the devices live that have been successfully onboarded. So if we click into here, you'll see that I've onboarded a VM here quickly. You'll see that it's Azure AD join, these captured the OS information, the build number, whether it's active, onboarded, the device ID. So we've got a bit of an inventory over here on the left. Then over here on the right, you'll see an overview, the risk level, right? Whether it's exposed, any alerts on the machine. I'll show you one of those on another tenant. This is the device configuration here. All right, so it's going to show you these settings here. So it's going to be able to see the firewall settings, and we're going to be able to see the protection settings here. Now they came from that initial wizard that did the policy for us. My security recommendations are going to tell me, okay, typically this is what you're going to need to do. You're going to need to update the Microsoft.NET framework. There's a 0-day vulnerability on Windows 10, which is, again, you can see this is the reason things. This is the reason things are pretty weak. Go the other way, maybe. So there are 231 known vulnerabilities there that I need to address. So if I select that, again, it's going to drill in on this information. It's going to tell me in great detail what I need to do. You'll see here that I also get the associated CVEs, which I can then again drill into even further to get information about why that's bad, what the vulnerability is, what the remediation is. So all of that is, again, nicely available to me. And if I want, I can open the full recommendation here. I can see my exposed devices, so it's only one device in this environment, the installed devices, again, and the CVEs. And if you want, you can report an inaccuracy if it is incorrect. All right, so that's basically what I see in my recommendations for that device. So let's go back in here and just show you the inventory. So the inventory is going to show me all the software that is installed on there. So I can be able to firstly see what's on there. And you can see here, this is going to indicate any threats that are on there at the moment. All right, so the red icon here indicates threats. The gray recommends that I'm all good. You'll see at the top, I can, filter if I want. So I can filter by machines, different statuses. I can also customize the columns. So I can add additional columns. And I can also search for specific machines in here if I want. Now, under the three dots, you'll see that I get discovered vulnerabilities. So that's going to tell me, known threats on software that's installed, on the environment there. And of course, I'm going to get any missing KBs, and I haven't been able to update this device yet. So that's going to tell me all the updates. So we click on here. All right, it's going to show me the ID, the information, the CVEs, basically that it rectifies. Okay, so all the devices that are onboarded will appear in this device inventory. Now, interestingly enough, you'll notice up the top here, I've also got the capability here for network devices. Now, you can set up this environment so that not only will it scan your devices, it will also scan things like routers and switches and all that sort of stuff for you as well. So again, if I go in here, all right, and have a look, this is my production tenant. You'll see here that I have a number of machines here. These have different exposure levels. So if I go into this one here, just show you what it looks like with a bit more real world data here. All right, that's not good. All right, let's refresh the page. Maybe it's timed out. Yeah, okay, I think I know what that is. No, that's done that. So we'll leave that for the time being. So the idea here is that if we do get any threats or any vulnerabilities, they're going to appear in the alerts for this individual item. Okay, so the idea here is that they will be bubbled up into this overarching incident. So this incidents item in security.microsoft.com is going to basically look at all the incidents across all our Defender products. So it's going to report on incidents that are related to Defender for Office, our emails, for Defender for Identity. So one place to go. If we go in here, you'll see this will show us our email and collaboration alerts in there. So these are our incidents and alerts. These are our actions. Again, these are common. This is one of the big benefits here across that environment, is the ability to get that that single pane of glass across all the threats in in that particular environment, right? So not only Defender for Endpoint, but also Defender for Office 365, email, and so on. Now, if we look at our threat analytics, again, our threat analytics are going to take into account our endpoints as well. You'll see here that, again, we've got a list of all the CVEs. We've got an indication of any of those that are seen in our environment. So this is the value of Microsoft feeding this information, into our environment, and we can again go in and drill into more details on our devices. By going into the vulnerability management down here, we do get a score. Okay, I still think secure score is more important as a starting point, but we do get a look at our devices there if we want. We do get a nice summary here across our environments. Here's our recommendation. So this looks across all our devices and again presents our recommendations across that total environment. So it's looking across all the devices. Okay. So we can now go and target updates and patches and fixes across our total environment. Remediation is the same sort of thing. Okay, what do we need to go in and patch? What do we need to do to go in and update? And again, we can also set some exceptions there if we want to do that. Here's our software inventory, again, across the whole environment. So this would be looking across all the devices that I have. All right, so again, we can do this rather than looking at individual items in the list there and going through them each one individually. We can bring up a summary of that, so we can then get an overview of the software inventory in our environments. Right, so again, quite easy to do and nice summarized information. Same thing around weaknesses. Again, they're CVEs that haven't been dealt with. We get a nice summary across there, and we also get an event timeline. So what that means is when we get an outbreak, it may not be limited to just a single machine. It may occur across multiple machines. They jump from one machine to another machine to another machine. So we want to be able to go in here and look at the events across our total environment. So we can look at the events per machine, drill into what's happened, but we can also look at the events totally across our environment. Also in here, you do have some tutorials. You can use some documentation there to understand the threats that are there. And down the bottom here, we do have the ability for some device configuration and the management and reporting if we so choose to go into those areas. So again, all the reporting can be provided here. All right, and it will bubble up into, all right, so if we go into our reports, Here in our Endpoint Manager, again, the ability of it integrating is super important or super handy here because it's going to give us failures of configuration, but also it's going to give us things around our security. So you've got your device compliance, you've got group policy, you'll see the Microsoft Defender for AV here as well, the firewall, all of that sort of stuff basically is available to us as well. All right, so again, really handy in its capabilities, and the integration is a real winner here. All right. So the other thing I wanted to show you just before we drop back to the slides is, again, go into settings here, go into endpoints, and what we get here is the capability down here to set up web content filtering. So this is where we could go in and create a policy. All right, so let me just go in here and create a quick demo policy. So you'll see here I can choose to block certain content types. Again, there's no information on what these actually are. Again, that would allow people to work around it, but I can go in and select those and then apply that to my devices. So Defender for Business, again, is an all or nothing affair, so that policy applies to all devices. If you have, for example, if you have Microsoft Defender for Endpoint P2, then you can customize the items that is targeted at. Okay, so that is one of the differences between Defender for Business and P2. P2 gives you that more granularity where you can target those individual devices if you want. Right. So again, very simple, very straightforward process. If you have Business Premium, you already have Defender for Business, go in, complete the wizard. Then, like I said, go down the bottom here into settings, go into the endpoints, and then go in. My advice would be initially just onboard a couple of devices manually using the script that is available here. And then once you've done that, look at then onboarding them using the Endpoint Security option here because that is included in Business Premium. Okay, and that will then make that available for you as well. And that's a much easier way to deploy all of those capabilities. So quickly, let me mention another thing here that, again, very, very common question that we get is, okay, what about servers? My response is, what's a server? In this day and age, surely you've gone everything to the cloud, but no. So Defender for Server is handled through Azure. And again, it's now called Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So the idea here is it's basically an agent, or it's a connection to a server, which can be on-prem, in Azure as a VM or whatever. You'll see again, Microsoft have got P1 and P2 plans, and they're roughly, $6, or let's say $7 and $21 a month, and that's per server. So they're per device, whereas Defender for Business is per user. Again, you'll see there are some differences in the Plan 1 versus Plan 2, what they cover, what their capabilities are. So you can get Defender for Endpoints, which are typically workstations or user devices, per user licensing, and you can get the licensing per server if you want, and there are 2 or 3 plans for that. Now, there are some resources there for you. Again, I'll make sure that these slides are available after the fact. Again, some information from me. Blog's the best place to keep up to date with all the stuff that I do, some offerings there. Contact me if you do have any questions. And I think what I might do at this point is turn it back over to Mark, maybe, to meet the people there and see if we do have any questions.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rob. I think what I really liked hearing about over the last 45 minutes is when you keep mentioning that it's included with Business Premium. So like you mentioned, that you've got the Azure AD with your conditional access, and you're so rightly so how important it is when it comes down to a security footprint for a tenant. You've got your Intune, your Defender for Office 365 P1, all included. And over the years, I felt like Business Premium is progressively beginning more and more so as a well-rounded and the one place to go to for all your sub 300 seat security. And with Defender for Business being added in there as well, I feel that the loop has finally been closed off. So yeah, I think it's absolutely fantastic that the Microsoft have done this to really show that you can go to Business Premium for everything that you need. But even more so than the security side of things, you've got the collaboration that we haven't even touched on yet, which is another discussion point in itself. So no, thanks very much.
I think the winner is, as you said, is the integration, is the capabilities of the SKU, especially around security. And I think the other winner is, like I said, it's integration. I mean, they're not reinventing the wheel. They're not creating their own device management environment. So just a quick demo here, since my other one failed because my privileges aren't escalated enough. So this is Microsoft Sentinel in my production environment. You'll see I've got 2 Sentinels, so I can actually do multi-tenant here, but I'm going to select my production one so you can see. So all of the signals from Defender are going to feed up into here. All right, so you'll see here, this is giving me an outline, and here's an incident here. So this is an incident where a user in my environment has escalated. But if you have a look down here, you'll see that it's because of PIM, Privileged Identity Management. But again, you see the amount of information that is provided. And again, this is one of the big benefits of the Defender for Business environment. It's basically going to start feeding those sort of signals up into a tool like Sentinel, and it's going to allow you to go in and look at the logs and look at things like workbooks, so you can go in and do Power BI style dashboards on all of this. So the big benefit here is going to be, like I said, around the integration side of thing, and that's where I think Microsoft is really going to be the dominant player.
Yeah, completely agreed. There are a few questions in the chat, and I'll get to them in just one moment. I just want to quickly introduce the team that you can lean on here at Ingram Micro AU Cloud. Now, you've got obviously myself, the business development manager in the team for the modern work and security team. We are lucky enough to have the experience and industry experience, I should say, knowledge on a lot of the modern work and security SKUs, licenses, and features within the Microsoft stack. Savag Tmukian is our pre-sale solution architect, and there is a very good chance that you might have already spoken with the third chap there, Chaminda. He is our Microsoft modern work and security SME. So all 3 of us can be reached out on those email addresses for any support that you need on the Microsoft stack, specifically, as I mentioned, around the modern workplace and security. What I might quickly do, Rob, before we quickly go back to those questions that I'm just looking at them now, I reckon we'll peel them off pretty quickly. We, Ingram Micro, do have 2 campaigns and promotions running at the moment. The first one being going to Microsoft 365 Business Premium as a net new order. You will be able to get that for your tenant 30 days for free. So that's 30 days for free of Business Premium, amongst a couple of other SKUs that you can also do there. And the other one that I'd like to mention today that may not have reached a lot of people just yet is you can also get Microsoft Defender for Business for free for 30 days again. Yeah, 30 days again. For if you actually purchase prior to June 30th. So June 30th is the cutoff date for 2 of those campaigns, but I would highly recommend and implore you to look into how you could benefit from this for your current customers, specifically for a lot of projects that are going to be running before the end of June. Now, the first question, Rob, Defender, is that included with E3 and E5?
So the idea is that we get Defender for Endpoint P2, right? The full mocker with E5, which generally you get with everything else. And then you actually get P1 with Microsoft 365 E3. So yes, you do get it with the enterprise SKU. So you get P1 with E3 effectively, and you get P2 with E5. And obviously Defender for Business you get with Business Premium.
Perfect. There was a question there, any comments on the value of deploying Defender for Business in a BYOD environment, not considering Business Premium? So what I think he's asking is the standalone.
100%. Yep. There's no question, right?
Yep.
If you're serious about security, if you're serious about reducing your workload and bringing all the signals into a single environment, you aren't going to get the same security if you have a BYOD environment, no question, right? best option, best security option is enrolled devices. But if you can't do that and you want to be as secure as possible, absolutely. There's no question that Defender for Business will allow you to do that, because the connection is independent of Intune and Endpoint Manager. It doesn't require device enrollment. It has its own capabilities for communication and configuration and event shipping. So 100%, no question. Everything in the Microsoft, everything I would suggest should have Defender for Endpoint configured on it, whether it's Azure AD join, standalone, on-prem, or whatever, simply to get all those signals and the policies, and again, use tools like Sentinel as your overarching single pane of glass.
Perfect. Thanks very much. And just on the Sentinel, if you are wanting to know more about the Sentinel, we've recently done another session on Sentinel, similar to what we've done here for Defender for Business, but previous to that, which you will find on our YouTube channel as well. Are there any, I don't look like there's any too many questions coming through at this point. Actually, there was a question, Rob, that I did get asked a couple of times in the recent weeks, is there seems to be so many Microsoft Defender 4, Microsoft Defender 4. When we're looking at Microsoft Defender for Business, do you need any of those other Defender products to actually complete everything that it can do as a standalone product?
Well, as with anything, again, the idea here is Microsoft's, compartmentalized the, the concept here. So there are different defenders for different requirements, right? So what I'll do is I would suggest a nice summary. It's a blog post that I wrote here. So if you go to my blog, blog.ciapps.com, do a search for all the defenders. This lists out all the things under here that are defined as Defender. Okay, so you've got things like Windows Defender Exploit Guard, that does a particular job. You've got things like Credential Guard, that does a particular job. Now, they're all under the Defender banner as a protection security thing, but you'll see here that we've got Defender for Office, so that's focused on email. Defender for Identity is focused for on-prem AD. We've got Defender for Cloud, which is, VMs, storage accounts, Azure, AWS, all that sort of stuff. So again, you'll see all those there. We've got Defender for Endpoint, as we've talked about today. You'll see that we've got, Smart Screen, antivirus. So there's a whole range here. So again, if you want a list of sort of all the stuff that's out there, again, go and have a look at this blog post that I've written here to cover it off. But the idea is, like Microsoft 365, Defender is the overarching brand. Underneath that will be specific services to tackle specific security jobs. But the big benefit here is that they all integrate into, this single console here. So if we had Defender for Identity, that would appear here. If we had some other Defender, that would appear here. The Defender for Cloud Apps is now beginning to roll into this console. So that's the advantage here. Yes, they are slightly different Defender products in what they're focused on, but they all end up in the same console, pushing signals to, the overarching Microsoft monitoring tool. So that's probably the best way to describe it.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Rob. Doesn't look there's too many other questions at the moment, but what I might take the opportunity to pop another question in there that I've spoken to some other partners about, mate. So I think we did speak about this earlier on, but I wouldn't mind airing it. Now, we do have a lot of partners out there that are wanting to look into starting their security practice. Now, as you rightly mentioned, there's multiple facets within the Microsoft stack as to what you can look at first, what you can do, the certification, qualifications. But if you had to, from your experience in helping a lot of partners develop that muscle internally within the business and technically, where do you find them the best place for them to look, or the best place for them to start when it comes down to security?
Well, again, at the end of the day, it's all about knowledge, knowing your products and implementing them the best. If you want to be a good driver, practice driving, go to advanced driver training sort of thing. But the starting point is Secure Score. Without question of a doubt, Secure Score is where you should be starting. It's the, go-to number one, simplest way to get a rating, a score out of 100 as to how well your tenant is protected. Is it absolute? No, absolutely not. There's plenty of other options out there, but this is a great place to start because, one, it gives you a benchmark figure, And then it gives you a list of recommended actions. It goes and tells you to go and do this, click on this, install this, change this registry setting, deploy this, do what you need to do, and then we'll reevaluate the score. And you've got, the history, you've got the metrics there, right? Now, as a benchmark, right, every partner in my book, as a best practice, should be at 90 or above. Their aim should be 90. Now, I would suggest at a minimum it should be 65. You can get to 65 by effectively just running a standard script and enabling all the default options, but you should be able to get it to 90. Now, once you've got it to 90, you get your customers to 90, then you go to your prospects and say, look, ours is 90, what's yours, right? So it's going to be much lower than 90. I say, look, we can get you to 90. The other thing in all of this is that insurance companies now are beginning to use SecureScore as a benchmark for working out cybersecurity insurance premiums. So again, to me, that's a place to start, but there are lots of options around security. There are lots of options around certification, reading, and at the end of the day, get in there, use it as a partner. You have access to most of this stuff. Otherwise, go and set up a demo tenant, play with it, and understand how it's going. But the best way to get a feel for it is to use it yourself, implement it inside your own business, focus on, the one set of tools I would suggest from Microsoft, because that's where you can really exploit the integrations and, deploy it with automation capabilities. But the simple answer is start with SecureScore.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. Look, we have come up to time here. There was a couple other questions there, but look, we will ensure that we do get to you individually. If you don't mind putting up that slide for the team there, Rob.
Yep.
So again, just to reiterate once more, if there is anything that you would like to see or you'd need from Ingram Micro's cloud team, please feel free to reach out to myself, Savag, or Chaminda. We've got a breadth of knowledge from business, technical, program knowledge, very deep understanding program knowledge with Chaminda and a couple of the colleagues as well. So please feel free to reach out. Otherwise, thank you very much for coming and attending the webinar for today. Thank you very much, Robert Crane, for sharing your expertise and your knowledge and taking us through Defender for Business. And I hope everyone has taken away exactly what they wanted to take away with what you wanted to come in with. So thank you very much again, and take care.